A lot's happened since I posted episode 6 of my Ladykillers model railway build, namely I finished the layout. As you may remember, I promised to get the Ladykillers finished in time for the Woolwich show in December last year. Well, I did. I still have a few little tweaks to add, but I'll be showing all of these in the upcoming episodes. But shall we pick up where we left off? All right then. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode in my brand new model railway build, the Ladykillers. And in this episode, I'm going to be showing you how I build the levels. As you'll know from episode 1, the Ladykillers layout has 3 levels. Level 1 has 4 lines of track, one of which has no power going to it because the train will be stationary. Level 2 has Mrs. Wilberforce's house and all the street scenes from the film. Now you may remember at the start of this layout build, I was planning to have the gas holders and an O-scale interior Mrs. Wilberforce's living room on level 3. Well, as with all good model railway plans, things change. And so I've tweaked the layout slightly to include the North London line, part of the North London Railway, which you can see in most wide shots of Mrs. Wilberforce's house in the film. So I'm going to be showing you how I create all of those levels to turn this to this. Now, when it comes time to building your levels, you can use a number of different materials to create your levels, just like you did with your baseboard. Some people use wood or insulation board. Wood is particularly good if you're building a layout that's going to stay in one place, a permanent feature in your home. But as you know, I'm building an exhibition layout. So the most important thing for me is that the layout needs to be light. So I'm going to be using this good old-fashioned polystyrene. It's very, very light, but it's also nice and strong. So I can put a number of different buildings and rails and track and so on this, and it will be perfectly fine. So I'm going to be using that. Now, another thing I want to tell you is building your levels is a bit of a complex jigsaw puzzle. And what I mean by that is there are some things you're going to need to glue in place on your baseboard before you add level 2, 3, and so on, because you don't want to get to the point where you've added your extra levels and then you think, oh my goodness, I should have glued something in on the baseboard beforehand. So a little bit of thought and planning is needed before you go ahead and build those levels. Think about what needs to be in place and how you're going to access it once the levels are in place. So do that little bit of homework first. That's a good tip for you there. What that means for me, the Ladykillers layout, I've had to pre-build a couple of items, and I'm videoing this slightly out of order, but bear with me. I've already made Copenhagen Tunnel, my version of it, and I've also made the grassy bank that comes up from the tunnel and an extra wall at the end. I've had to do that because I can't put level 2 in place until those are glued in. But don't worry, I am going to do a separate tutorial on how I built Copenhagen Tunnel. It was scratch built, it was a lot of effort, a lot of practice, and I had to have several attempts at it. So I'm going to do a separate video on how I created my version of Copenhagen Tunnel for you. But first things first, I need to get going and place the supports on the layout. These supports are going to support level 2. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So let's get started with that. We're going to use our polystyrene sheets to create the supports, and the first thing I'm going to do is map out where I need my supports to be. Now this will be different for each layout, of course. In this area here I'm going to have my tram, and it's quite heavy, as well as there being a lot of scenery, so I'm going to need this bit to be quite solid and well supported. I then cut the polystyrene into squares and rectangles. Before you start cutting, I recommend you watch the tutorial towards the end of this video on the best way to cut polystyrene. I've already started. You can see here I've got these support structures here and also here. I've got this one here. I'm just going to show you how I do it. I've cut at the bottom because it's going to go over these wires. So I'm going to put it in place just to make sure it all fits nicely and I know what I'm doing. That looks good. Later in this episode, I'm going to be showing you how I cut polystyrene. So don't worry, I'll get to that in just a moment. But for now, I'm just going to glue this. I'm going to put some glue on the bottom level, the bottom edge here. And this is just basic PVA glue. And remember, only use PVA glue on polystyrene. Anything else will melt it and can actually release some not so nice fumes. I'm also going to put it on the side, just this side here. Okay, that looks about right. Now what you'll also need are some cocktail sticks. These will hold it in place as it's gluing and give it just that extra bit of support. I'm going to slide this into place here. Make sure I've got it aligned nicely. And when I'm happy with it, about there, I'm going to take one cocktail stick and I'm going to slide it in the side all the way through. Now be careful. You might want to clip the edge of the cocktail stick off at the end because it's quite sharp and you can hurt your thumb a little bit. And then I'm going to put one through the other side. Again, just to anchor it in place and make sure it's all nice and firm. You can level these off if you want to. I'm just going to leave those like that for now because this area is going to be covered. I've put this piece of polystyrene here not only to act as support, but it also acts as a bit of a sound barrier. Remember, I've got this little speaker here and it's going to be playing the minuet. So with this here, it's going to make sure all the sound goes forward. Now I'm going to carry on adding columns to provide the support for level 2, and then I'm going to show you the rest of the build. But as you can see, all of the columns are now glued down in place. I just want to talk you through what I've done. At the front here, you can see these two bits here. I've painted those black because those are going to be inside the tunnel and I want it to look as dark as possible. I've created more columns over here, and this bit here, you can see there's a hole, and that's to allow the sound from the speaker just to go through. We don't want a solid wall there. Now, the observant among you may notice that there's something on this layout that doesn't look quite my usual standard, shall we say. Now, that's because grumpy cameraman, you begged me, didn't you?
Yeah.
Begged me, Dawn, can I please do something on the layout? And I rather reluctantly, but foolishly agreed in retrospect. I said, Grumpy, okay, you can build a wall. Build this wall for me here.
How cool is that? That is amazing wall. Yeah. See the sellotape on the top, all right? I've created that effect by having something to make it look like it's watery.
Well, luckily, you won't see that because level 2 is going right there. So
is it? Oh.
Yeah, so you won't see that bit, but
it's brilliant.
Let me know what you think. Another feature on this layout is this coach. I've stuck that down because that's going to be static and I need that to be in place before I put level 2 on. And all that remains for me to do now is to add level 2, the flat surfaces. But before I do that, remember, I've got some pre-made bits that I have to add in first. So I'm going to get cracking. I'm going to do that complex jigsaw puzzle that I mentioned before, put everything in place, then put level 2 on top and glue everything down. Before adding level 2, I have to glue down Copenhagen tunnel, a wall and grassy bank, and a second wall and tunnel entrance. I also have to add static grass to my grassy bank. I'm doing this before I add it to the layout as I don't want static grass to go everywhere. I also need to finish Mrs. Wilberforce's garden, as you can see here. But don't worry, I'm going to show you how to create all these features in my upcoming video series. So once all your supports and columns are in place, it's time to add your level. And this is the surface of the next level up. And for this, I use these polystyrene sheets. As I said, these are 2.5 centimeters thick, and I get a pack of around 10 of these for about £7 or £8. Now, every layout is different, of course, so you're going to have to configure your sheets of polystyrene to fit your size and dimensions. For me, you can see a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle there. I've had to cut very irregular shapes just to make it all fit. So this is almost done. I've just got one final piece to add here, and I just need to cut this piece and glue it down. So I'm going to cut it with my polystyrene cutter. I'm just going to turn it on here. And this attachment heats up very, very quickly. And in a moment, I'm going to be showing you the tutorial for how to cut polystyrene properly. So I've marked a position there already. I'm just going to cut it straight through, and I'm going to put it over here so that it falls onto that section there. Now I'm going to very quickly turn this off, down there like that, and just place that here so it cools nice and safely. So now I'm going to glue that down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the glue to the supports just here, and as I've said in other videos in this series, use PVA glue when you're gluing polystyrene. Other glues will, plastic glues or super glue will just melt it and also give off some quite nasty fumes that you don't particularly want while you're modelling. Just going to coat that there and there, and that should be sufficient. Going to turn this over and put it in place like that. It fits nicely in place like a jigsaw, quite satisfying. And after I've added the glue, I'm just going to use toothpicks to hold it in place while the glue dries, and these will stay in place to add a little bit of extra support. I'm just going to quickly put that through there. So just check that there are no pieces sticking up. You may need to add some extra toothpicks. I can see this corner here is just sticking up a little bit, so I'm just going to put another one in place just to make sure it's nice and level. And I'm just going to make a little bit of an adjustment. There we go. I'm happy with that. So now level 2 is in place, and I'm going to start adding on all the buildings, the roads and the pavements. As you can see, I've already got Mrs. Wilberforce's house and her garden there, and I'm going to be painting the house very, very soon. So I promised you a tutorial on the best way to cut polystyrene for your model railway layout. Well, here it is. Now, first things first, how do you cut the polystyrene in the first place? Well, that may seem like a silly question, but really it's not, because you may find that using scissors or craft knives don't quite work the way you want them to. Let me just demonstrate. So I've got my pieces of polystyrene here. Let me just show you. I'm going to use scissors first. So I'm going to take my scissors. I'm going to snip off. Just let me show you snipping off an edge here. It's a little bit tricky. And that's what happens. So it goes everywhere. You can't really control it. And it's not even a very nice smooth edge there. So let me show you with a craft knife. I'm just going to put those down. If I use a craft knife, now I can cut it and use this kind of sawing method. Again, a little bit crumbly, but also if you're cutting anything that's deeper than that, this bit here of the blade is going to get in the way. So it's really not very suitable, but maybe suitable for little areas. So I'm going to put that to one side. Another method of cutting polystyrene is to use a hacksaw. I'm just going to clear that away. You can see it makes a lot of mess. A hacksaw is probably my second favourite method of cutting polystyrene. It is quite effective. I'm going to show you. A little bit laborious, but it does provide and cut a nice clean edge, as you can see. Nice and clean. That's a nice smooth edge. However, look at all of this mess. It literally goes everywhere. So a simple tip for you, run a vacuum cleaner next to where you're cutting. Put the hose pipe there, and that will suck up all the polystyrene dust. When I was making Brief Encounter, I ended up with polystyrene all over the house. It really is that messy. But my preferred method of cutting polystyrene is with one of these. It is actually called the polystyrene cutter, and it comes with some different attachments, some different heads on it. This one cost me about £15 for the 3 attachments, and as you might expect, they do different things. I'm just going to demonstrate this for you, but the first thing you need to do when you're using one of these is to open a window and make sure your room is ventilated, because it gives off quite a strong smell when you're doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. I'm just going to move those to one side. What this tool does is it's good for making holes in your polystyrene where you're not kind of cutting to the edge of it. So I'm just going to demonstrate. I'm going to switch it on. As you can see, when I put it on the table, it's lifted off the edge, so you don't have to worry about the heated element burning your tabletop. This attachment takes a little bit of time to heat up, so I'm going to give it about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to show you how this works. And what you do with this, once it's hot, you just gently put it where you need to in the polystyrene. I'm just going to put it about there, I'm just guessing. And using a sawing motion, I'm just going to put it all the way to the other side. As you can see, it's gone through to the other side there. And I'm just going to use a sawing motion to cut through just gently like this. Takes a little bit of time. Don't rush it and don't force it. Just gently let the heat from the element guide you. Now, I'm not going to go all the way to the edge because I wanted to show you me doing a hole. So again, a little bit of a soaring action there. I'm just going to come up now. And what you find with these is because they're so precise, you can get quite creative with these and you can do all different kinds of shapes of holes. I'm just going to keep going. And there you go. Just pop that through. And there you have it, a hole in your polystyrene just like that. Now I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to switch attachments. Of course, this is very, very hot. Do not touch it. I'm just going to make sure I take it off from the base, put it down there. And I'm going to put on my other attachment here. Make sure it's in properly. Give it a good push. And again, I'm going to plug it in like that. Now this one is good for making tunnel entrances because you can go from the edge of the polystyrene all the way up. So once again, I'm going to do it on this piece here. So I'm going to start, this one heats up quicker than the other. And you don't need to use a soaring action for this. You can just go across like this. And it makes a really nice sizzling sound. I quite like that. But as you can see, the smoke coming off it. There you go. Now I prefer this method because it's cleaner, it's quicker. And I just prefer the finish on that one. So that's job done. I'm going to turn this off now. And I'm just going to leave that, put that one to one side.
Job done. Now with every episode, I keep a running tally of how much I've spent on building the layout so far. For this episode, I paid just over £26 for materials and equipment. That means so far I've spent £480 on materials and equipment, but the actual cost of those items used is £476.
So that's it for episode 7. Coming up in the next episode, I'm going to show you how I create the back scene for the Ladykillers using Canva software. So stay tuned, watch out for that video. Take care, see you next time. Bye-bye.
If you like this video, please do like, share and subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of all my future videos. And why not browse the shop at modelrailwayquest.com/shop. And to receive a 10% discount on everything in the shop, become a Questie. Join the Model Railway Quest membership to receive that discount and a whole bunch of perks and goodies. Details on how to join are above. I'm Dawn Quest and this is Model Railway Quest.